girls were taught you are worthy if you are pleasing to others. If you take care of others, then you are a good girl.
Thanks for watching Hot Flashes and Cool Topics podcast. Be sure to subscribe and ring that bell to catch all of our conversations. Now, on to the show. Welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics podcast, everybody. Today we have Dr. Mindy Pelz on, and we are going to be discussing her upcoming book, Age Like a Girl, How Menopause Rewires Your Brain for Mental Clarity, Increased Confidence, and Renewed Energy. Welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you, Bridget. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we're very excited too. I mean, every time I read a book about this, I learn something new. Colleen and I have been doing this podcast for 6 years. Amazing. And it doesn't matter. Any new book, I'm reading it and there's something in me that's like, oh my gosh, that's why that's happening.
Right. So
I had a lot of those moments while I was reading your book. And it was just really wonderful. Can you share what your hope was for this book?
Yeah, I appreciate you starting the conversation there. I was telling someone the other day, everybody should ask an author why they wrote a book. And for me, I always look at my books as opening a conversation up. Like there's this one part of menopause that we're not talking about. We're talking about the suffering. We're talking about the symptoms. We're talking about all the difficult things that are happening, but we're not talking about the why. Why does menopause happen? We are one of the only species. I mean, let me rephrase this. There are 4 species that live a significant period of time without their reproductive system, and we live the longest. So I had to go after the question of why do we live so long without a reproductive system? It doesn't seem like that was just a breakdown in the design. It seems like maybe something magical was going on and that these symptoms that we're experiencing are actually working in our favor. And that was the conversation I wanted to open up. And hopefully that came across in the book.
It absolutely did. And I mean, it's so interesting. One of my favorite things about the whole book, which there were a lot of favorite things, but one of them was the whole grandmother philosophy, and also the tribe. And I'm drawing a blank. It starts with an H. And how the Hadza tribe, how they lived, and why these things happen, and maybe what we can learn from the elders, or the crones. I loved all of that. The thing about the crones. And I kind of threw everything at you right there, but can you talk about the grandmother thing? Yeah.
Thank you. It's super fun as an author to hear what you responded to. So that was great. When I went to go look into studying fasting, what I knew about my research in fasting is that our bodies were designed to go long periods without food. So when I wanted to understand what was going on during the menopause process, I stumbled upon something called the grandmother hypothesis. And I actually brought the champion of the grandmother hypothesis on my podcast, who went and lived with the Hadza tribe. And the grandmother hypothesis gives us an understanding. It's like, and again, these are all like clues as to what's going on. And the understanding is that back in the hunter and gatherer days, that when a woman ended her period, she and their menstrual cycle stopped, she was moved to a different position in the tribe. Now that part is really key because this doesn't exist in the modern world. In the modern world, we have so many women scared of aging that they don't want to let on, they don't want to tell their age, they would freeze their faces, they dye their gray hairs, but primally, they move them to a place of leadership. And with that, and the Hadza tribe is a current modern day tribe that is doing this as we speak. And the idea is that without all the energy going towards your reproductive system, that energy gets restored back to the postmenopausal woman. And there are 3 areas that she will use that energy in. One is fitness. The second one is cognition. and mental clarity, which is not the message we're getting. And the third is social leadership. And her job was to go and forage for food and bring it back to the tribe to feed the tribe while the men were off doing a big animal kill. The grandmothers, I mean, the visual of this is so exciting. The grandmothers would go off and forage for food, bring it back and feed the tribe, because to catch an animal and kill an animal is hard. It took time. And the men only came back with food 3% of the time. So it was, if you put this in through the lens of our modern world, what they did back then is they moved her to a different place of significance. They gave her a purpose. She's an evolutionary heroine. And they did that because they understood that all the energy that goes to reproduction is now going to other parts of her brain and her body that is making her a real asset to the tribe. And that's not what we think. I mean, that's not the message we're getting right now.
No, we're getting the message that we should be invisible and shrink ourselves. And except for people like you, and the book comes out saying, no, there's so much more out there for us. And what I love too, it incorporated so much in the talking of this tribe about the movement, about how they were gone for hours and hours at a time. And then also, you know, the what they were doing for the family, the storytelling. Can you talk about how important that was in that area?
That's my favorite part of the book. So thank you for that.
Yes.
And to, you know, people can read more detail in the book, but these grandmothers go 7 hours walking every single day. So when you think we're supposed to break down fitness wise, you might want to rethink that when you understand our evolutionary biology. But the storytelling was so interesting to me. So as I was researching the Hadza tribe and the grandmother hypothesis, storytelling was all over this hunter-gatherer grandmother daily life. And it showed up as two different interesting areas. Because she was considered a wise elder of the tribe, people within the tribe would go and ask her to tell stories of her life, tell stories of wisdom. Now, again, that's not happening right now in our culture, in our modern life. But what was happening as the grandmother was telling stories was two really powerful things. One was she actually was making acetylcholine, which is a key neurotransmitter that we need to keep our memory sharp. So the example I like to use with this is, is your mother still alive?
No. I'm one of 12 children. So
wow.
And I'm number 11. So, but she was 85. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like my mom, she's 86 and she loves to tell the same story over and over again. And before I did this research, I used to think, God, why does she tell me the same story? And then I realized, actually, there's something magical happening in her brain as she tells that story. She is releasing making her own neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, which is really important for memory. Now, if the story she's telling is exciting, if it's fun to tell, she's getting dopamine, she's getting serotonin. So here is this 86-year-old woman telling a story that I've maybe heard a bazillion times, but she's bathing her brain in neurotransmitters. And that's what these grandmothers did, is they imparted their wisdom into the tribe through storytelling, which kept them mentally sharp. Now, the second thing that I think is really important to point out is the part of the grandmother hypothesis is the belief that maybe it was the grandmother that actually helped develop the intellect of the human brain. Because as she was telling stories to the grandchildren and the children around the tribe, they were learning new language. It was expanding their knowledge. And so there was some evidence in my research that I found that they believe it was the grandmother's storytelling didn't just help her, but it's why our language as a species has evolved and to what it is today.
It's so amazing. I mean, that really to me stood out so much in the book. And not only that, you're talking about community. When they're
Yeah.
doing that, they're keeping all these
Yeah.
things that are important to longevity, healthy longevity,
Right.
not just, it's hard, but you want to have a healthy longevity. You do it.
Well
So,
said.
right. Like
Yeah.
one of these where you talked about too, the importance, how Alzheimer's, it affects,
Yeah.
is it a third? I know you have it
Oh
here.
yeah.
A
One out
third
of
of the
three
women.
women will die with Alzheimer's. And so if we just take the grandmother hypothesis and we go, okay, in the hunter gatherer days, we moved her to a place of purpose. We moved her to elder, wise elder role. And we used her in a beautiful way so that the community could benefit. Okay, let's go over here to today. I mean, so often we're tossing our seniors away. We are so scared of aging that we had to put the word anti in front of it. And then we had to create a whole multi-billion-dollar movement around selling women things to slow down aging because women are so scared they're going to be tossed aside. But yet, when you look at the neuroscience behind menopause and behind getting older, you start to see, wait, you shouldn't toss us aside. We actually could change the world if you leaned into us. So when we look at Alzheimer's, there's a part of me that's really deeply wonders if Alzheimer's happens because women feel like they start to go invisible. They're not needed anymore. And so those neurons that would tell stories and would be used for purpose, they start to, if you don't use a neuron, it will degenerate and go away. So the worst thing we can do to our elders is isolate them in a home by themselves. We need to bring them into the community so that we can keep their brains sharp. So, question for us all is Alzheimer's an indication of how we treat our elders and how we toss our elders aside? And what would change if we did exactly what the Hadza tribe does and we move our elder women to a place of purpose and a place of focus to help us all?
Absolutely. And you touched on the neuroscience and the neurochemicals, and that was a big part of your book too. And just, when we're transitioning, we've got the reproductive years. And that was a whole nother part too. I'm so excited about it. But Gilligan, the author Gilligan, talked
Yes.
about, and that was one of my ahas when she talked about the ages and she talked about puberty, postpartum, and perimenopause.
Crazy.
And I thought, when she said 9 years old, I think, what was it, 9 years old? You wrote the book, so
but it's really fun to hear what you connect with because that might be my favorite part. Yeah. So in researching the book, and this book I researched for almost 10 years.
Wow.
So it's been a lot of questions, a lot of interviews, a lot of trying to understand this. And last year, about a year and a half ago, I came across Carol Gilligan's work. And she is a feminist psychologist. She's still supposedly a professor at NYU, and she's in her 80s. And she's got purpose. There's an example. Yes. So back in the 1980s, which is when many of us were growing up, what Carol Gilligan wanted to do is see the impact that society had on a girl's brain. And so she looked at three different groups. One was a group of both boys and girls at 9 and 10. The second group was like 11 and 12, and the third was 13. And the analogy I use, she asked each group a different variety of questions. But the analogy I always use is that at 9 or 10, if a boy and girl are asked, what do you want to eat? They each will tell you exactly what they want. So the boy's like, I want this. The girl says, yep, I'm going to have this. And they may be completely different. By 11, the boy's still very certain. He still knows what he wants to eat, but the girl starts to hesitate. By 13, that same question, the boy will say, tell you exactly what he wants to eat. And the girl will say, I don't know, what are you eating? So what I point out in the book is that there is something that happens to our brains when estrogen kicks in. What is the difference between a 9-year-old girl and a 13-year-old girl? And that difference is puberty. And so with puberty comes estrogen. And with estrogen comes what we call a relational cross-referenced brain, where we're able to use both our right and left hemispheres so that in every single decision we make. Now, this is really important because the left hemisphere is logic and linear. The right hemisphere is emotional, it's relational and creative. So once a girl goes into puberty, she's making every decision from both hemispheres of her brain because estrogen connects the hemispheres. So I know, I'll just use myself as an example. Like, I didn't want to rock the boat because, we've been taught, and this is Carol Gilligan's work, is like, so girls were taught you are worthy if you are pleasing to others. If you take care of others, then you are a good girl. And that is because of this relational brain. We want to be in relationship with everybody around us. Now, that's the part when I read hers, I was like, wow.
That was for me. I was like 9 years old. My most confident time of my life was when I was 9 years old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. And that's why, Like a Girl is my brand, but it fits so nice that we would age like a girl means go back to that 9-year-old and really start to get to know what her desires were before this relational brain kicked in. Now, what I did with Carol Gilligan's understanding of how we've been trained by our society is I then went and looked at Lisa Mosconi's work. And I actually have had multiple conversations with Lisa, and she's one of the top female brain researchers in the world. And she talks about how this relational brain changes as estrogen goes down during menopause. And we stop using our both right and left hemisphere for every decision. We can function more maybe from the right hemisphere, and then we could go over to the left hemisphere, but we don't eat both hemispheres necessarily to every decision in our life. What this looks like is all of a sudden, we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to make decisions that work for us. We don't need to take everybody's opinion into consideration. We're going to do it our way. And this also you probably resonated with because when you go through menopause, you just start blurting out things. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to just tell you this now because you don't have estrogen connecting both hemispheres. Now, this is liberation for women. I don't know about you, but not having to take everybody's opinion into my decisions and not having to think about what everybody thinks of me in order to feel worthy, being able to drop that, therein lies the benefit of menopause.
Absolutely. And the people that don't understand what's going on with you, that's where the problem can be. But then when you discover these things that you just really don't care what other people think anymore, that's been the greatest gift. The greatest gift of this time of life. And another thing you point out too, that I always thought, why didn't anybody ever tell me that this was going to be such a great time of life? You don't hear that.
No.
And I really don't know. I might say I was most confident when I was 9, but I don't know if I've ever been happier than I am now.
Yes.
So
thank you. Do you mind? How old are you?
I am 57. I'll be 58 very soon. So yeah.
And how many years have you been in menopause?
Oh, it's been like 11 years. I think 47. Yeah, I was kind of not
early
super
bloomer.
Early, but early. And at that time when I was going through peri, and I think you mentioned that as well, I didn't know what the word perimenopause was. I'd never heard of it.
We weren't talking about it.
We weren't talking about it. Doctors hadn't really been educated that much unless they really were specialized in the area. And, I can't really blame them because they weren't educated in that area so much. So it is just amazing. And then you also talk about the girl gang of what's happening in your body. Can you talk about the girl gang? Because that was so interesting.
Yeah. So I've stumbled in my 10-year research for this book. I stumbled upon an article that said estrogen stimulates a whole host of neurotransmitters. And I was like, what? Every time she came in, she brought dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, glutamate, GABA, BDNF, oxytocin. Why didn't anybody ever tell me this? But what I noticed in my practice that matched this study was I had a practice full of what I call the mama bears. Women who had my practice was in Silicon Valley, and these were like high performing families where the kids were like masters at a musical instrument. They played a sport, they were in theater, and they were killing it in their grades. And the mom was driving them around everywhere. And all these moms work in my practice, and I started to see a pattern with them. They all would tell me, you know what? I don't get it. Like, my kids are amazing. My husband is incredible. My marriage is great. I live in a beautiful home, but I lost my motivation. I'm just depressed. I'm anxious. I don't understand what's going on. And that's when I matched their symptoms with this study. And that's when I saw that we are not just losing estrogen and progesterone and maybe testosterone. That estrogen was so powerful, she stimulated a whole host of these neurochemicals. And because I like to keep things fun, I call them the girl gang. It's like her posse of neurochemicals that kept you happy. So of course you get depressed. Of course you have brain fog. Of course you can't remember words. Of course you can't hold on to new information. And of course you aren't feeling like you want to connect to people in the same way as you used to. Because when estrogen left, the girl gang was left without a leader. This girl gang of neurochemicals wasn't being stimulated. So I also often call it a neurochemical armor. It's like this neurochemical armor comes down and we are just raw. And so a big part of that part 2 of the book is how do we use our lifestyle to bring the girl gang back? You got to go find the girl gang. If you feeling like you're depressed, okay, where can we help you go get dopamine and serotonin? If you're feeling like you just don't have the same connection to your spouse or your children or your parents, okay, we got to teach you how to go find oxytocin. If you're having trouble focusing, we've got to use your lifestyle to help you balance GABA and glutamate. The girl gang is massively affected by estrogen's exit. And that was a huge part of the book that I wanted to bring forward.
Right. And I mean, and there's so many things that you included in there that you can do. I mean, the food, the intake of food, when you intake food, that was really important. Movement is so important. And our world right now is not conducive.
Thank you.
Really, either of those. So, you could, if you want to talk a little bit about the fasting and also about the movement and what, the movement throughout the day, like, on a computer, you're not up like the tribe was out all day,
Bingo.
Yes. And how that could really wreak havoc and what we can do to bring back that girl gang, like you said. If you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that the brain after 40, as estrogen starts to go away, becomes less efficient at using glucose. Glucose is what happens when we eat. So when we eat something, it turns into glucose and it feeds our cells and feeds our brain. Now, when you go through this process, your brain is less efficient at using glucose. But the beautiful thing is you have another fuel for your brain, and it's called a ketone. And when you start to lean into ketones, you will find your brain fog, your trouble focusing, your anxiety, your depression, I am not joking, will come back within days. So the question becomes, well, how do you get a ketone? Does that mean I have to not eat carbs? And I have come to the conclusion after watching so many women fast that we still need to really keep our priority of good nutrition. I don't think an extremely low carb diet is going to necessarily be the cure-all for the brain changes that happen to women when they go through this experience. So in the book, I bring forth that there are 4 ways to get ketones. And my preferred way, my favorite way is fasting. And you don't have to fast long. I mean, I'm talking 13 to 15 hours every day. I calculated that I think the Hadza tribe probably fasts about 17 or 18 hours every single day. But in that fasted state, your brain switches over and it starts to gobble up ketones. So if you haven't eaten, which is what fasting is, for an extended period of time, your body starts making ketones, the brain just fires up. And all of a sudden now you have focus, you have happiness. And part of that is evolutionary. You were meant to go save the tribe. You're an evolutionary heroine. So that's what the Hadza tribe did, is that they worked off of ketones. And so that's what I really wanted to bring forth, is like, please, can we talk about fasting for menopausal women? Because this is how we're going to get that brain to come right back online as quickly as possible.
Right.
Now to your second, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was so surprised when the fats were higher, the part where the fats and then the protein and then the carbs.
Yeah.
That was the first time I've ever seen that. Yeah.
So I found some really interesting research, and this actually ties in. This one fascinates me. Ties into GLP-1 hormone. Mm. So I found some interesting research that the order in which we eat our food, fats first, protein, then carbohydrate, actually it triggers a response in the gut that will secrete, the microbes will make GLP-1 hormone.
Whoa.
Right?
Yeah.
So but it has to be the right fat. Mm-hmm. It has to be good fat, because bad fat destroys these microbes. So there's simple things like, okay, let's start training how to fast, just a short period, 13 to 15 hours. Let's look at the order of your food. Let's look at the quality of the food. I really dove in to try to understand what the Hadza were eating. And, you know, a lot of sweet potatoes, a lot of potatoes and tubers, a lot of berries, a lot of legumes. Like, these are things that the women back in the hunter-gatherer days leaned into. And now we're not talking about that for menopausal women. We're talking about just, you know, hopefully you're off the ultra-processed foods, because those are the ones that'll destroy it. So all the way in which you eat, the timing in which you eat, and the quality of the food that you're eating are all going to have an effect on how your brain works through this experience. So I hear a lot of women say, like, I've actually, I don't know if you had this experience with my book, but I've had a lot of people look at the subtitle and they're like, I don't believe it. You can't. You're telling me that my brain is going to have better clarity. It's going to have I'm going to have better confidence, more energy. And that's why I put that whole chapter on food, because I was like, yeah, but if you look at how you eat, you will experience this. 45, 46-year-old women in America today are not having that same kind of mental clarity, because nobody gave them the manual on what to eat and when to eat and what order to eat in. And if you try that, I promise you, because I've seen it work for hundreds of thousands of menopausal women, your brain comes back online.
That's so amazing. Yeah.
It's encouraging, right?
Yes, it is.
Like,
yeah.
It's amazing. So that was the food chapter. Movement was also interesting. So in my practice, these mama bears, when they would drop off their children at school, and they would go and work out, and they were hardcore athletes, many of them. And they kept getting injured, and the injuries wouldn't heal. And so I started to research what's happening to the musculoskeletal system. And there are two major things we have to look at. Estrogen, part of the girl gang, are two molecules called collagen and creatine. When you had high levels of estrogen, it gave you collagen. Now we all know, oh gosh, the wrinkles are showing up. So we know that collagen is diminishing. But collagen is also diminishing in your joints. So if you're doing hardcore CrossFit, if you are in a Spartan race, if you are not varying your workouts, you're going to be more prone to joint injury, like hip replacement surgery, shoulders, frozen shoulder and shoulder injuries is a really common menopausal symptom. Well, that's because you lost collagen. Because when estrogen left, she took collagen with her. Okay, creatine. creatine helps with muscle power. So a lot of the women in my practice were like, I just don't feel like working out anymore. It doesn't feel like my muscles will have the same kind of juice. And that's because of creatine. So, and you're seeing this in the culture right now. I don't know about your news feed, but creatine supplements
all over the place. Yes, yes,
are coming through everywhere, and with good reason. So, what I brought forward in that chapter is I really think we need to have women start adding these two nutrients back in. And I gave food options in there, or you can do supplement options. But I wanted to take it one step further and look at the fitness behavior of the Hadza tribe. And I noticed that there were a couple of things. First, endurance is a big thing. So, but they didn't run, they walked. So 7 hours every day walking. I think walking is one of the most healing things for the brain, especially a stressed out brain. It absolutely calms your brain. Second thing they did, which was fascinating to me in this research, was they were carrying little toddlers on their back. They had baskets of tubers that they would have to carry home. And so when you look at the studies coming out on rucking and how every single postmenopausal woman is putting on a weighted vest, you have to start to ask yourself, why is that working for us? Well, it put us in design with our body. It put us in this evolutionary design. We don't carry a basket of tubers on our back anymore, but we can put a 10-pound rucking vest on, and we can start to see that that added weight is going to prevent things like osteoporosis. The other interesting things that I don't think get enough credit are these grandmothers would dig, so they used their hands. Well, for years, we have been saying grip strength and longevity go hand in hand. Well, nobody's explained why. It's definitely a functionality, but it is in the menopausal evolutionary design. These grandmothers were digging for tubers, which is really important. And then the last thing that I thought was really interesting is that in order to dig for tubers, they had to squat. So the need to be able to have lubrication in our joints and the importance of squatting, digging, walking, these are not complicated movements, but they are requirements of a healthy aging body. And again, we're not giving the conversation enough attention to those simple activities.
Absolutely. That was so amazing too, the grip strength and how it correlated with or death or
Right.
your longevity. I was just amazed. And I have seen, it's been coming through my feed, people doing the grip strength test and things. And, the squatting as well. And I'm the 11th of 12 children. So I have a lot of older siblings to see what's happening to them. 10 girls, 2 boys. So,
whoa.
Yeah. So I've seen it all. Like some had a really rough menopause transition and some didn't. But then I'm watching some of my older sisters, and I had a sibling over to my house, and I know my couch sits a little low. She was having trouble getting up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that,
yes,
that's so important. Like, when you're in your 50s, you're not thinking, oh, I better keep my hands strong so I can get out of my chair in my 80s. And nobody ever looks at another person and says, your hands are so beautiful. like we don't give our hands enough credit. But as you're aging, and this is so important when we look at exercise, we need to start to move more towards functionality. Of course we want to look good, but again, if we go back to Carol Gilligan, we were taught that if we look good, we will be worthy. And so I really am seeing a lot of women as they go into their postmenopausal years, really let go of I asked a friend the other day, I'm like, do you ever think about how you care about what people think of how you look when you leave the house? And she's 60 and she's like, no, I don't care at all. But do you care if you can get up out of a chair effortlessly? And do you care if you can go hike 10 miles a day? These things become more and more important as we age. And that was the point of showing that this isn't just, people doing old people workouts. This is actually something that we need to really bring back into the forefront of our consideration as we age. Can we squat? Can we grip? Can we, can we hold heavy, strength training has become very popular for menopausal women, which with good reason. We need able to hold things, grip things, move. There's a functional piece that doesn't get enough credit.
Absolutely. And, it's so funny. I think back to tell you, you're a good girl. Make sure you're a good girl.
Yeah.
Every time I'm on a plane, and my husband, he means well. He means well. Can I get your suitcase? And I'm like, no, let me continue to put my
Yes.
suitcase up
Oh
because,
my gosh.
Men will jump right over to try to, and I think it's a societal thing. Oh, men have to be the big, strong guy to get the suitcase. And I'm like, I have to keep lifting my suitcase. I do not take this away from me. I can open my own jar.
Yeah.
I need to open.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God, Bridget, you and I must be living twin lives because I have an incredibly supportive husband. I have a son who's 23. And whenever I go to lift something heavy, they're like, here, do you want me to get that for you? And since researching this book, I'm like, no, same thing. I'm like, you have to let me do it because if I don't, then how else am I going to get functional strength?
Right. You'll lose your strength. And I don't want to be that person. I want to be able to put my bag up. But
exactly.
The importance of sleep. And you had some stuff in there when it came to sleep that I'd never heard about the red light. Getting the red light. And I thought, oh my goodness, could you talk a little bit about the light and everything with sleep? And sleep is so important.
It's so important, and it's so hard to do.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Why is it so hard? It shouldn't be so hard, but that's what I found in my research was that estrogen stimulated a part of the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus that was the timekeeper of the body. So when you had ample amounts of estrogen, estrogen would come in at ovulation and she would peak and she would tell the brain, hey, this is where we are in the day. You should secrete melatonin. Now, when estrogen goes down, and I want to point out that a lot of people will ask me, well, what if you have a patch or you have cream or you're on HRT of some kind? You're still at 55, even on your HRT, not getting the same dose of estrogen that you had at 25. You're not supposed to. So without estrogen, this timekeeper doesn't know where it is in the day, which is why we get into bed at 10 o'clock at night and we feel like we want to run a marathon, or maybe we choose to try to solve our children's problems at that time, which I don't recommend.
Right.
I've tried it. Doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
And so, and it's because the timekeeper's mixed up. So in the absence of estrogen, you've got to show the timekeeper where you are in the day. Now, here's the beautiful part of our miraculous body. When you get red light in the morning, when you see the sunlight or the sunrise, that signals to your brain that the day is starting and that melatonin needs to be shut off. Within 2 hours after that, cortisol comes in, and cortisol is the hormone that wants you to go move because we were hunting in the morning. We were foraging for food. So you should be moving in the morning, doing most of your exercise workouts within a couple of hours of waking up. Now, the midday light, this is crazy fascinating to me. The midday light, it has a full spectrum of colors, not just blue light, but green and yellow and orange, like almost all the colors. But it will stimulate receptor sites in our eyes for serotonin, another member of the girl gang. So when we go out in the middle of the day without our sunglasses on, you're not only getting a boost of serotonin, but you're telling the timekeeper, hey, guess what? It's 12 o'clock right now. It's 1 o'clock. It's 2 o'clock. Now, at the end of the day, if you go out and walk at sunset, that red light in the sky tells the timekeeper, okay, the day is winding down, and now you need to make melatonin again. So in the absence of a high dose of estrogen, the part of the big reason we are not sleeping is because we are not getting exposure to these three critical different types of light.
It's amazing too, because that goes back to, our history, our, ancient times where the light was up, it was
Right.
morning, then it was dark, and you didn't have electricity, and you didn't have your phone, to
Yeah,
scroll on. And that can be such an
exactly.
issue. And that was so important. You put such good tips in there too about the cold room temperature, have it cooler, which is great too.
The
And
room temperature is interesting, don't you think?
yes,
Because
yes,
you hear a lot of women say, "Oh, I've got to open the window," and at night when they go to sleep. But the research I found showed that actually, in order to signal to your body it's time to go to sleep, you want to, a couple hours before sleep, have the temperature in your room start to go down. That's a way you can get melatonin secreting in your body. But I don't know about you. I'll get on the couch with a warm blanket. And so
yes.
right? So I've started now going and reading in my bedroom, which is freezing, to start to get my body to go. It's like you have to train the body, and like, we're going to sleep now. You need to give me all the wonderful neurochemicals that help me sleep. But without estrogen, we've got to do it on our own to give the body that signal.
Right. And just so many things in there that you can do to give your body that signal. And I think I've said this to every author that's been on. Boy, I wish I'd read this book when I was
Yeah,
40.
right.
But it still is
Yeah,
so important to read right now because it
yeah,
does have things that you can do. You have appendixes in the back. You have one on how to talk to the man, or the man needs to read that chapter, the
yep,
man in your life, whether you're the son, the husband, the partner, whomever, the boss. I mean, you need to be
perfect.
reading that. And I really do enjoy all the everything that you had in there. And you also talked about friendships and who to
Mm,
have in your circle and who to
mm.
not have in your circle. And it's so funny who I could pick out. So Colleen, my co-host, she isn't here right now, but I'm looking at my notes. And what is she? It starts with a P.
The
The
potentialist.
She's the potentialist.
Yep.
So she is the one that when we discuss starting doing this podcast, we should get answers to these questions. Let's do this. And I'm like, that's why you're in my tribe. You're the potentialist. So
That's it.
so it was so, when you talked about the people that bring the negativity into your life too, like, oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah,
I maybe, I mean, it's okay to vent sometimes, but you don't want it to
agreed.
every time. And I did,
Yeah,
it was interesting when you brought up too how, hey, they're saying this about people. When you walk away, they're probably saying these things about you too. So it
exactly.
exactly. It's really great. I mean, the resources that you put in there are so vital. And is this December 16th? That's what I
Yeah,
saw.
yeah,
I
December
saw on
16th. Yeah.
Amazon, I think that it was going to come out December 16th. So make sure you're looking for this book, everybody. It's just wonderful. So I'm going to read the title again so you don't forget. It is Age Like a Girl: How Menopause Rewires Your Brain for Mental Clarity, Increased Confidence, and Renewed Energy. And thank you so much, Dr. Mindy Pelz, for being
Thank you.
on Hot Flashes and Cool Topics.
Yeah, thank you, Bridget, and congrats to Colleen.
Oh, yes. Thank you.